It was just 2 years ago that Sri Lanka went through a really tough bankruptcy. But now, something interesting is happening. And it's not about the big government bailouts or what the stock market's doing. Nope, it's happening inside people's wallets. And it might just point to a surprising economic comeback. To really get it, we have to start with just one single number.
16,039. Now just let that sink in for a second. In a country that was very recently completely gripped by financial fear, this number, well, it represents a massive vote of confidence. It's a signal that people are starting to believe in the economy again, one purchase at a time.
So that's the big mystery we're going to unravel today. Why, in the single month of October 2025, did Sri Lankans add over 16,000 new credit cards? I mean, what does the sudden embrace of credit really tell us about the true economic health of a nation that's trying to get back on its feet? To understand just how remarkable this is, we got to remember how dire things were not that long ago. Yeah, to really appreciate the optimism we're seeing now, you have to understand the fear of yesterday. So let's rewind the clock and go back to the bottom of that V. So back in 2022, Sri Lanka defaulted on its debt. Prices were just going through the roof. So to stop things from spiraling out of control, the central bank basically had to slam the brakes on the entire economy by jacking up interest rates. For the average person, this meant any debt you already had became this crushing weight. And taking on new debt? Forget about it. It was just not an option. So what did people do? Well, they reacted, and they reacted fast. In 2023, the country saw a net loss of almost 40,000 active credit cards. People weren't just avoiding new debt, they were actively getting rid of it. We're talking literally cutting up their cards just to escape those skyrocketing interest payments. You can really see this V-shaped journey laid out right here. Bankruptcy hits hard in 2022, people are shedding credit cards like crazy in 2023, and then the turning point. Something shifted in 2024 that set the stage for the surge we're seeing today. So, what happened? What was the catalyst? A comeback like this doesn't just happen by accident. It was actually driven by a very deliberate and honestly pretty aggressive strategy to rebuild confidence from the ground up. The key was a massive pivot in monetary policy. You know that bitter medicine of high interest rates? Well, it actually worked to tame inflation. So once that was under control, the central bank completely flipped the script. It started aggressively cutting those same rates to get people borrowing and spending again.
And listen, they weren't just dipping their toes in the water here. Starting in June of 2023, the central bank cut its key policy rates 8 separate times. 8! Every single cut was another signal to banks and to consumers that, hey, the worst is over and it's getting cheaper to borrow again. The impact this had on how people felt about their money was a complete 180. You had the fear of 2023, which was all about high interest rates and cutting up cards. That gave way to the optimism of 2025, where lower rates and a sense of stability made people feel comfortable with getting new lines of credit. Just two totally different worlds.
Okay, so with all that backstory in mind, let's circle back to today and really break down this surge. The numbers behind the story are honestly pretty amazing. And here it is again, our star number, plus 16,039. But now we get it, right? It's not just some random figure. It is a powerful monthly signal of renewed economic activity. We're talking a 0.76% increase in a single month. And you might be thinking, okay, but was that just a one-off fluke? Absolutely not. If you zoom out and look at the first 10 months of 2025, the number of active credit cards grew by almost 125,000. That is a sustained trend. That's real confidence coming back. So where does that leave us? All told, we're looking at over 2.1 million active credit cards in Sri Lanka. And that shows us that this recent surge isn't some small niche trend. It's a huge shift happening within a large, well-established consumer credit market. So how did this all come together? Well, analysts say it was like a chain reaction. First, the central bank's rate cuts started to bring back some economic stability. Then, the banks saw their opportunity. They started rolling out all these aggressive promotions. Discounts at supermarkets, special offers with retailers, all to get people to start spending again. And the result of all of that? The final, most crucial ingredient? Consumer confidence started to grow. So let's zoom out. What does all this plastic in people's wallets really tell us about the big picture for Sri Lanka's economy? Well, it's not just us connecting the dots. Market analysts are confirming that the connection is direct. They're pointing out that the country's economic recovery and stability are the main reasons that customers feel secure enough to start using credit again.
It's really a textbook example of a big macro policy affecting everybody's personal finance.
So what's the big takeaway here? This whole thing is about so much more than just credit cards. It's a real, tangible sign that consumer confidence is finally returning. It's an indicator that people's personal finances are starting to stabilize, and it serves as this real-world proof that the monetary policy actually worked. And, maybe most importantly, this could be the engine that helps power future spending and drives the recovery even further.
But, and there's always a but, right? This whole recovery story leaves us with one critical question. Is this big surge in credit a sign of a healthy, sustainable comeback for the long haul, or could it be the first chapter of a brand new consumer debt crisis? How Sri Lanka answers that question is going to define its economic future.